Hey y'all, what up? Welcome. I know it's been a long time since we have done this. This is the official Black People Parenting podcast. One of the episodes of the it's still up and running. We just haven't done it in a while. Dr. Gaddis is here, of course. She's been ducking and dodging me, so it's been hard to get in contact with her. So if you're wondering why we haven't been doing and having these conversations, please forward all inquiries to Dr. Bambi Gaddis. I'll give you your email at a later date. But we are here to have this conversation today. Dr. G and I, we normally get together once a month to have a conversation about health, about mental health and wellness, and just all things regarding health and how they tie into HIV and AIDS and things like that. So tonight is going to be another one of those conversations. So we have another great doctor on the show with us tonight, Dr. Lashaunda Lucas. I got two beautifully brown doctors on the show with me tonight, and I love every second of it. Let me just say that. Love it when I'm surrounded by all of this estrogen and melanin and just all the things. So welcome, Dr. Lashaunda Lucas. She is the CEO of Beauty Marks Consulting and Counseling. And we are here. We're going to kind of talk about mental health in Black women. We're going to talk about trauma in Black women. We're going to talk about a lot of things because we've been seeing some things lately, particularly on social media in regards to just some of the things that Black women go through. And we want to kind of tie all that together, being that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So just a lot of things we gotta tap into tonight. So thank you, Dr. Lucas. Thank you, Dr. Gaddis, for joining me for this very important conversation, this very important topic. Glad you all could be here. Anybody want to say anything? Dr. G, you got anything to say? Which I like your little hat. You look cute. Anything you want to say, Dr. G, before we get down to it?
Yeah, well, I just love being thrown under the bus. Let me just say that Mr. Chavis and I have a continuing growth experience because he's teaching me quite a bit. And my next lesson is going to be in social media. So that being said, I want to give tributes to him as one of several faith consultants that have been working with me over the past couple of years. We have been partnering through the Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center. They are intimately involved, were and continue to be intimately involved in conversations around vaccines, specifically clinical trial research. And I've really been excited about the work that Dion and I and my other consultants have been able to have as we look at these intersectional issues that have to do not just with minority engagement in clinical trial research. And I have to say that part of our mission is making sure that we create environments where we provide factual, science-based information to our community. We're trying to deter misinformation and disinformation that unfortunately some people have obtained through their medical degree from the streets or through some other format that does not ensure that when we make decisions about health and when we share information with our families that it's accurate. So, when we think about mental health, all of that's intertwined in how we make choices and decisions. And so I'm grateful, given the month that we celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month, that we have Dr. Lucas on tonight to explore some of the, what I'll say are traumas, past and current, and how we explore strategies that will help not just women, but Black families overcome these traumas as women continue to spend a lot of time taking care of other people, but not always taking the time to take care of ourselves. And so, Dr. Lucas, I welcome you to this forum, and I will yield to the conversation. And I've already shared with Mr. Chavis that I have one final commentary I want to share with the audience before we depart.
For sure. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Lucas, let's tap into it. Let's get into it. Let's talk about some of the unique mental health challenges that Black women are facing today. From the work that you do, what are some of the struggles that you see on the forefront of mental health as it pertains to Black women?
Yeah, I think there is. Well, let me start by saying I feel like I am in a room of like just greatness. I think this has been echoed, but Dion, I just appreciate you as a friend, as a colleague, and then Dr. Gaddis, I just see it all over you, greatness, and the work that you do is amazing. Um, so I'll start, and Dr. Gaddis is as a Black woman, right? There's so much stigma around who we are, right? And so some of my research is on self-worth and value for Black women. And where do we find that value? Where do we determine our worth? And so when we look at how the media represents us, when we even think about healthcare and the decisions that are made around our mental health, and then even historically how they have treated it, I think all of these messages impact our mental health and well-being, how we see ourselves, how we place value on ourselves, which then does impact our decision making. And a lot of those things kind of go back to four things, and I call it our SHIT: our shame, our hurts, our insecurities, and our thoughts. So when I work with women, what comes up a lot? Past traumas associated with shame, or the things that have happened to us that we've taken ownership of, or things, decisions that we might have made as well. Past hurts, things that have happened to us, people who have deceived us or hurt us in some way, we're still holding on to it. That impacts our mental health. Our insecurities, which could be things that we in areas where we don't feel good enough. But an insecurity could also be an area you don't feel safe, right? So
Mm,
insecurities impact our mental health, and then our thoughts. How do we think of ourselves? What type of lens do we see the world through? And that's largely shaped by the media and how we're represented in this country.
mm. So, from my experience, I have a wife, I have a daughter, and I try to look at life through their eyes a lot of times, right? And I know that there are a lot of there are a lot of systemic issues that impact uh, my mental health as a man, right? But I don't know because I don't have that shared life experience to know what it looks like from a woman's perspective. So what are some of the specific societal and systemic issues that are impacting the mental health of Black women today?
Oh my gosh, everything, right? So let's start by talking about representation, how we're represented, right? So in my research, I'm studying all the representations of Black women, and they call these tropes or archetypes, right, of Black women. You have the mammy, you have the magical
Hmm.
Negro, you have the Jezebel, the welfare queen, the gold digger. These are all representations of Black women and how we're portrayed. And so as I begin to study this, I'm thinking none of these are positive. Where
Hmm.
is the Black woman represented in a positive light, right? So we also have the angry Black woman or the strong Black woman, and that used to be our positive one, except the other side of that is high instances of stress, also in the inability to maintain intimate relationships, right? Because we're so guarded and strong, right? So we don't have those positive representations. So how does that play out, right? When people approach us, they don't believe that we have softness. And so they treat us in a very masculine way. That impacts my mental health, right? Even historically, with health practices, they thought that Black women didn't feel pain with
Hmm.
different procedures that women would have, right? They
Hmm.
thought we
Hmm.
didn't feel pain, and they tested on us without pain medication, right? So it's this idea that we don't deserve softness and that we don't deserve gentleness, that impacts our mental health. The other thing is something that happened to me the other day. I'm riding down the street and this guy is hanging out the window trying to get my attention, right? And when I said no thank you, he proceeded to like curse me out, call me every name in the book. And
Mm.
so I'm thinking to myself, right? If I was a white woman, would I have been responded to that way? One, he might not even been hanging out the window trying to talk to me because he would have said, "Nah, she's not gonna respond to that." So how that plays out in a lot of areas is that they try to give us what they think we deserve, right? That's in the workplace with salary negotiation. That's how we are communicated with, how we're spoken to, how we're treated. We a lot of the time receive a message that this is all you deserve, right? And that should be good enough for you. And when you speak up about that, now you're aggressive. Now you're angry, right? That impacts my mental health because there's research about silencing. And a lot of women, especially Black women, deal with self silencing. So, silencing myself and my voice to not cause a disruption, to not look like the angry Black woman, to not make waves, right? To go along and get along because at least they're giving you this, you know?
Mhm.
And so it impacts our self worth and our self esteem.
I wanna go
I
back. Hold on, Doctor G. Hold on one second. Hold that thought for 1 second because there's something that I want to ask Dr. Lucas to expound on. Because I want to use this. I want to be sure that we're using this space as an educational space. And you said something about Black women not feeling pain, Dr. Lucas, and I want you to give a brief overview, just because I know that you know, of the history of gynecology in America, because I don't think a lot of people know this story, and I think it's important that we touch on this since we're talking about health and since we're talking about Black women in the health care system in America. I think it's important that in this platform we talk about this, the way that gynecology as we know it now was discovered in America.
Absolutely. And this goes back to what Dr. Gaddis was saying. There's disinformation and misinformation that's out there. So we all have heard about the Tuskegee experiments, right?
Hmm.
Experiment, the syphilis experiment. But we don't know, Dion, like you said, the history of gynecology. So a lot of the medical advancements that we have in the field of gynecology came from being tested on Black women. So what would happen is that they would take Black women and they would experiment on them. They would test, what is the procedure? I can't, it's not coming to me. The procedure when they remove the ovaries and help me, Dr. Gaddis.
Hysterectomy.
A hysterectomy. Thank you. That wasn't coming to my mind. But they would do that without pain meds because they believed that we did not feel pain. And whenever we did vocalize or verbalize pain, that we were lying, right? So there were
Hmm.
messages that the Negro was a liar, that they were manipulative, and all of this, right? This was the messaging. And so the Black woman would be experimented on. We would, the way that they tested on if we would even survive having babies without some of the medical advancements they had at the time was they tested it on us. They yanked babies out of our bodies, right? um, all of these things were tested on us. So a lot of the medical advancements in the areas of gynecology were studied on Black women, which led to a part of the mistrust we have for the medical field and why we don't get vaccinated and why we don't like to go to doctors and all these sorts of things because we still suffer from those experiments and experiences that took place.
Thank you, Dr. G. You were going to say something.
Well, one, I want to reinforce what Dr. Lucas just noted. The name that comes most profoundly to the conversation is Dr. J. Marion Sims, who
Hmm.
was from South Carolina, who has a statue up down at the State House, but it is he. And in his hometown, I believe, of Lancaster, South Carolina, they have tributes to Dr. J. Marion Sims for his advancements in gynecology. I want to really again lift up the terminology of they used to versus they are. We still unfortunately have these stories that evolve about people of color in general, but Black women, in this case specifically, who one have been, it's even with pain meds, even how pain meds are prescribed. You know, when they say, well, to Dr. Lucas's observation and commentary, you don't feel a certain amount of pain, or you don't deserve the right to have no pain. And so, from the milligrams that are prescribed, to the frequency in which we are given medication and told to let it last over periods of time and not being able to deal with it. I myself nor Dr. Lucas are suggesting that there are not issues with addiction. You know, we're not suggesting that there are people who seek to relieve their pain and over medicate. But there are things in place. What she is addressing and what I am reinforcing and lifting up is the notion from a medical provider that Black women do not experience and feel the same way white women feel. That the considerations that are given and the empathy that's given to them about their pain is not something we can indulge ourselves in, and that in the professional workplace, it just lives on. That we are many times singled out. You could look at Harvard, what happened with the president of Harvard, as a glaring example of what happens and what is happening with Black women who sit in these pinnacle spaces of leadership who are now under siege by systems. And so when you talk about mental health, there's these different levels, because the same stress that a woman in an executive field could feel, I'm trying to figure out what's the difference between that and a woman who works as in housekeeping, who's targeted by her employer. I haven't quite figured out if there's any difference in the stress. What it yields is similar.
Yeah.
So I want to. There's so many different directions we can go with this conversation, and I want to kind of stick around here for a minute because I think it's important for Black women to advocate for themselves, right? One of the things that I've noticed since the pandemic is that the healthcare system as a whole, with everyone from your pharmacy to your operating doctor or whatever, there is a disconnection to where we aren't receiving, and I just mean in general, like we aren't receiving the same quality of service that we were receiving pre-COVID, right? One of the things that I have noticed, whether it be stories that I've heard, people who who are close to me who have, gone to the doctor and the doctor told them, oh, go, take some over-the-counter medicine, and then 8 or 9 months later, it ends up they have cancer in their body, right? Because they were advocating for themselves this entire time, but nobody was listening to them. I want both of you to speak to the importance of advocating for yourselves as Black women to your medical professionals, whether it be to your pharmacist, whether it be to your gynecologist, whether it be to your, doctor your PCP. Why is it important for Black women specifically to advocate for themselves in this climate that we're in right now, Dr. Lucas?
I want to start by saying representation matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a firm believer of going places where I'm represented,
Mm-hmm.
where people are going to understand me, my culture, my language, right? They're going to understand my experience. So it's easier to advocate for yourself to a person who looks like you, who understands you. And I say that because it's not about what you say, but it's about what they hear, right? And what they
Mm-hmm.
understand. So I would first say go find you a medical provider who looks like you. And as a black therapist, I'm also saying black woman, find you a black therapist. I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
that there's not great, therapists of every race. I'm just saying find you a black therapist because there are times when we say certain things. I was saying something to a therapist the other day, and they said, um, they basically told me I shouldn't say that. I said, well, if I can't say it in therapy, where am I say it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So find someone who looks like you. Also, I'm going to say advocate for yourself. My stepdad passed away in 2019, and he passed away suddenly. And when we asked for his medical records from his primary care provider, and all through those records for years, the doctor noted a health literacy gap. It was documented that there was a health literacy gap, meaning my stepdad didn't understand what the doctor was saying to him. And the
Mm-hmm.
doctor knew this. What was not documented was what the doctor did, the medical professional did to bridge the health literacy gap. What was not documented was what he did to make sure my stepdad understood. So when he passed away suddenly, for me as a medical professional, right, mental health professional, I'm thinking to myself, had he known better, right? Had he understood what the doctor was saying, then maybe we could have prevented this. So it is imperative that you advocate for yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable, take somebody with you who might be able to. I'm the advocate in my family because I run my mouth. Okay.
Hmm.
So I'm the advocate in my family. There's someone in your family who might be able to go with you, who might be able to look over documents with you. I'm on the phone when my mom goes to the doctor. I'm on the phone with her, right? To make sure that what we're hearing, we understand. So ask those questions. I have a Black primary care physician, amazing. I ask those questions. She takes the time to talk to me, to speak with me. It is imperative that you understand no question is embarrassing. You better ask those questions.
I'm a firm believer, and I say this on the show time and time again, that all of my healthcare professionals are Black women, simply because I believe there is no one in this world who will take better care of me than a Black woman. Everyone from my therapist to my dentist to my what's the eye doctor called? Uh, um,
Ophthalmologist or optometrist?
ophthalmologist. I was about to say obstetrician, but I know that one right.
No.
Ophthalmologist.
Maybe he meant
I know that one the
endodontists.
one.
He meant the teeth people.
Right. All of my medical professionals are Black women, and I think that's important. It gives me a certain sense of comfort just knowing that, right? So I want to talk about the relationship between physical health and mental health, because as we look at Mental Health Awareness Month, a lot of people may not necessarily make the connection, because when you feel good mentally, right, that I feel like that helps you to work on your mental health. You're not always eating emotional eating or binge eating out of emotion. You're more inclined to go to the gym. So Dr. Lucas, let's talk about some ways that we can kind of be sure that we are bridging the gap between mental health and physical health, and also making sure that people know that your mental health is just as important as your physical health. So if you could, let's kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I love that we're calling it healthcare now, right? Because it used to be completely separate. So the
Hmm.
fact that we're calling it healthcare allows it to come under the category and be just as important. Your mental health be just as important as your physical health. I want to throw out one of these research words, one of these PhD words, right? It's called allostatic load, right? And
Hmm.
so even going back to Black women not experiencing pain at the same degree as white women, right? It's not really physical pain, it's mental anguish, right? And emotional anguish. But there's this idea of allostatic load. Allostatic load is the amount of stress that you can carry as a person. We all have our own load, and yours may be different, Dion. Yours may be different, Dr. Gaddis. Mine may be different, right? We all can manage and handle a certain amount of stress on our bodies, on our minds, right? When we experience allostatic overload is when our ability to manage or cope, we don't have the ability to cope with it anymore, right? So we can manage a certain load, but when we experience overload, meaning we can't cope with it anymore, and that is when we begin to have high levels of stress that show up in our body. That is when we begin to have the back pain, the neck pain, the headaches. That's when we begin to have high blood pressure. That is when we begin to experience anxiety in a way that shows up physiologically, right? This has also been linked to areas of cancer, right? Just having these high degrees of stress. Back in the day, I was raised partially by my grandma, right? They would tell us stress will kill you. So we've
Hmm.
already known this information. Now we have these words to it. So we have to care for ourselves, our mental and emotional health. And I'm this weekend I'm speaking at a mental health summit, and I'm going to talk to them about emotional currency. Every relate because we're relational as Black people, we're very relational. Every relationship, there's a transaction. It costs you something. Every interaction you have with somebody costs you something, and that's called your emotional currency, what you spend on people, and what you receive back, right? And so if you spend too much, right? If you put too much in people in your relationships and you don't get that back, or let's say they take too much, they steal from you your energy, your peace, right? All these things that impacts your mental health. And that is going to show up physiologically as well.
How does that show up? That PhD work that you use, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it. How does that show up with decision making, right? Because oftentimes it can, I would assume that it could affect your decision making, and it can lead to you having or making unhealthy decisions, like binge eating, like engaging in activities like unprotected sex with
Absolutely.
strangers or with someone that you don't know what their sexual history is. Unpack that a little bit. What role that PhD work plays in our risky behaviors and the decisions that we make.
Yeah, for black women, allostatic overload, because remember, it's the inability to cope with your load of stress. You're going to start to deal with it the best way you can, which then shows up in addiction, recreational drug use that leads to abuse and misuse and addiction, right? It's going to show up with, if I can't manage all my bills and I don't have the resources, now I may go and make a decision I would normally make to end up in a relationship with this person who is possibly toxic, but he can provide some resources, right?
Mm,
It may show up in the people we begin to hang with because it's going to impact our self-worth. So now I don't see myself as I don't have these high standards. So I'm now letting people in my space that may cause me some problems, right? That may be engaging in some things that's going to get me in some trouble. And let's get real about it, right? Because now I'm angry, right? So I'm dealing with all of this. I'm frustrated. I'm stressed. And it may show up in the way that I respond in the workplace. It may show up in the way that I respond to someone, and now I'm fighting in the Walmart parking lot, right? You know what I'm saying? So it can show up and impact you in a grave way. So it is so important that we consider how much stress we're managing. We we are strong black women, but we don't have to show up like that all the time. We need
mhm,
support and resources. And I was talking today about our faith friends, people who gonna activate their faith with you, right? For
mhm,
something. You need your tribe, your people, your crew, your group chat, whatever you want to call it. You need people in place to back you up because we don't have to handle all this stuff anymore on our own. We used to. It
mhm,
goes back to slavery. Didn't black women manage everything? We had
mhm,
to. We managed rape, bearing the children of our slave owners, right? And raising them and having to love them. We nursed their children while getting beat. We cooked for them and not being able to eat. We saw our children and our families be sold away. We endured the beatings ourselves, and we had to be silent and we had to be strong for everybody. And we still bring that into today. And it
mhm.
takes a toll on our mental health and our physical health.
And now, Dr. G, oftentimes you are someone who has been in the field 25, 30 plus years. So oftentimes when folks, if I got the number wrong, just tell me. Um,
I'll
it
take.
often You take it. Okay. Oftentimes, when folks engage in these riskier behaviors, they end up in a situation where they have to come see you, right? And they have to connect with someone who needs to give them resources or information about how to protect themselves or what to do when they find themselves in a situation where they are HIV positive. So, what is uh, your viewpoint in terms of the connection between people's mental health and their decisions to go out here and do things that aren't physically healthy, in terms of the decisions they make with their sex life.
Um, what comes to mind first and foremost is, as a man thinketh, so is he.
Mm,
Um, and one of the when people have been acting in a certain way for a long period of time, they begin to think that's normal. So then people that are quote unquote enlightened attempt to bring to their attention that their thinking or their behavior is placing them in a space of risk. And they may have actually no clue. Many times they will become angry with you for bringing it to their attention. In public health conversation of pre-contemplation, how do we move from a place of non-concern to a place of saying that person may have a point there, or they could be right. Once they acknowledge that there is an issue, that begins the growth process. But unfortunately, it takes some people a long time. In some cases that I think about, friends that it took decades for them to come to the point of contemplation, where they finally acknowledged that the things they've been doing and the things they've put up with from people who, even folks who said they love them, that it was time for them to set boundaries, that it was time to cut them off. And so that is the hardest thing for us as Black folks. When do we cut them off? When do we say enough is enough? And that is our major challenge in wanting to build strong mental health skill sets, setting boundaries. And I know Dr. Lucas in her therapeutic setting has got to be talking about, how do I begin with this person that I love, whether it's a child that we need to set boundaries with, a spouse, a partner, a person at the job. How do we feel? How do we build self-efficacy, this feeling of empowerment, when we finally say, I'm not doing that anymore? Or I think I have the ability to just not just stop, because nothing just stops, especially but what we call as you know, in the addictions, we call harm reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have to move them into a harm reduction where they do it a little less than what they did before. But the goal is visualize yourself in a space where you have peace and contentment based on choices that you're now making that you refused to make before. And so when folks are making poor sexual decisions, the worst thing we can do is judge them. The worst thing we can do is condemn them. What we want to find out is, tell me more about the risk that you think you're taking. What if you continue on the path you're on, what do you think is the worst thing that could happen? And what could happen if you start to redirect your behavior and your thoughts in ways that not only spares you pain, but may save your life? And once people feel that you're not condemning them, that gives them a space to say, I'm not perfect, but I want to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be fulfilled, and I'm willing to start working on some of the things that I know have placed me in harm's way. So that's our goal as therapists, as public health professionals. We just want to move them one step closer to taking responsibility for their own life, because I can't do it for you. You have to do it. And
So how can
that's across health disparities.
mhm.
Across sexual decision making, it's across taking your pills every night for your diabetes. It's about taking your mental health medication. You know you have been diagnosed with an issue, but you refuse to take your medication, or having hypertension and refusing to comply with physicians. So this mentality of moving from pre-contemplation to saying, I need to address this, is it's integrated across everything we do.
Hmm. So how can we, because Dr. Lucas, you touched on something, and Dr. G, you touched on it as well. As Black folks, we are carrying on not just the traditions of our ancestors, and we're also carrying on the traumas of our ancestors, right? And a lot of us don't know the traumas that come from being enslaved. A lot of us don't know about the traumas that have been passed down from generation to generation. So what are some strategies, Dr. Lucas? What are some strategies for unpacking trauma? Like, what do you think are some strategies that can be used to unpack trauma?
That's so good. And I want to say, Dion, a lot of us, we can say we didn't live through it, and maybe we don't know a whole lot about slavery, but there's a theory of the collective unconscious, which means we share a consciousness with those who came before us, right? In our
For sure.
bloodline, our
For
people.
sure.
And that you feel it in your body, whether you have seen it for yourself, right? It's just an unconsciousness that we share. And so you may be dealing with intergenerational trauma that you didn't experience yourself, but maybe somebody in your lineage did. And I believe that. And also now we see it every day, and they call it trauma porn, where we're watching it and we feel it all over again and we're re-triggered. But I do want to point to this idea of unpacking, right? Because a lot of the time we say, let's unpack this, let's unpack that. And
Hmm.
so I decided, as a therapist, if I'm talking with you about something, I need to have a strategy that makes sense. I'm also a huge advocate for culturally responsive methods, right? I don't just want to use what somebody else calls evidence based if it don't work for Black people, if it don't work for Black women. So I have done some research and have formalized this idea of unpacking, which does three things. One, we address a traumatic experience for what it was. So we call a spade a spade. We're going to call it what it is, regardless, right? We're going to give a name to it. And then we're going to talk about how we perceived it in that moment. So that experience that traumatized us, sometimes we don't experience it the way that it was, right? We kind of perceive it one way. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how it's still showing up in your life. So I'll give an example of sexual abuse, right? Let's call it what it was. Was it molestation? Was it rape? Let's give a name to it. It wasn't that somebody played with my cookie. You know what I mean? It was molestation, it was rape or whatever. So that's calling a spade a spade. How you perceived it in the moment, right? Is I thought my uncle was he said he loved me. So I thought that I gotta do it because he said do it, and I don't tell anybody about it, right? Okay, that's how you perceived it in the moment. So instead of blaming yourself and saying that you participated, right, and or whatever, you were too young to understand, and this is how you perceived it. And then lastly, how does it still show up in your life? So this could lead to promiscuity, right? This could lead to mistrust. This could lead to several things. But how is it still showing up in your life? So we focus on those three things, and the traumas that we focus on are shame, hurts, insecurities, and thoughts. And I want to show you my workbook. So I've created this workbook. It's on sale on my website, drlashaundalucas.com. And it is the Unpack Your SHIT workbook, your shames, hurt, insecurities, and thoughts. This is a therapeutic tool that I would encourage every woman to purchase to unpack your shame, your hurts, your insecurities, and thoughts. So you can use it as any woman who's ready to address any trauma that you're experiencing. You can use it. But for my mental health professionals, you can use this as a guide with those that you serve or those that you journey with. I want to point out one activity in here, right? So the first activity that you get to is regarding shame, because a lot of the time we, as Black women, we experience shame. And so it is shame results from something that happened to you that you're now taking ownership of. You believe it's your fault, like that experience of sexual abuse, the example that I gave, or it's a decision you made because you were experiencing allostatic overload, right? And so you made a decision to cope with whatever you need, the stress that you were experiencing right at that moment, but now you might be ashamed of it, right? But we don't know that because in our culture we don't talk about these things, right? And because we're embarrassed, or because you don't want to feel the stigma that's put on that decision. But here's a shame assessment, and in this assessment there are some questions to consider, and you can rate whether you experience these things often or never, right? But what it does is help you to identify whether what you are experiencing is shame. Shame is one of the biggest things. Shame can either lead to low self-esteem or it can lead to narcissism, and those are on two completely different scales, but both are harmful for you, right? As a Black woman, as any person. But this book, the workbook, is filled with activities like that to help you unpack shame, past hurts, insecurities, and thoughts, and help to move past them so you can show up as your most healed and authentic self.
Hmm.
You know, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Go. No, no,
Dion.
no, no. You got it. You got it. Go. Go. You got it.
I'm listening to Doc, and I was reflecting on a course I took in my doctoral program on group counseling, and one of the things of the things I remember most, and I've told a couple of folks that at the end of the class, because this was an experiential class, it wasn't a listen at the teacher. You had to actually engage in the therapeutic techniques. And we were doing reflecting at the end. And someone said to me, based on the things that you shared about your life as a child, you being kidnapped by your dad, your mom, and then your dad kidnapping you back and blah, blah, blah. I thought many times, I wondered why you seemed to be normal. And that was the first time in my adult life that me sharing my story in this therapeutic class, that I had to confront that what I thought was like normal stuff, family stuff, in the eyes of other people, they saw it as trauma. I chose, back to Dr. Lucas and conversation, I chose to deal with that in a way that probably was suppressing things, but how I directed it was through academics. Instead of directing it through, say, feeling that I needed a man to fulfill this hole, I chose to get into sports and to get into academics as the way I relieved these thoughts or experiences. And so I think that part of what we're saying as we talk about looking for strategies, some people may be at a place where they can't afford a therapist. One of the weakest opportunities in our culture and in our community is finding good mental health support. So people can see it happening. They have children, they can see it manifesting, but don't have the linkages and the resources to go get any help. And so I think that's part of our challenge as we talk about Mental Health Awareness Month. How do we build stronger linkages so families know, where do you go? And what are affordable services that we can afford to avail ourselves to, and our children or spouses? We talk about late stage diagnosis of kidney failure and late stage diagnosis of cancer, et cetera, but we never really confront late stage mental health issues. We go to the church. So let's talk about faith for a minute. One of the reasons why I didn't go into sex therapy, because one of the first things that came to my head was Black folks don't go get therapy. Black folks won't go see a sex therapist. I mean, I was probably misguided in my thinking at 20 something, but I felt like they would go to their clergy before they would go to a therapist. And that is where that's one of the misnomers that I think we have to address in our community. If your clergy person, if your faith leader is not trained as a therapist, if they have taken no course, if they haven't been through a discipline that would allow them to sit in a space with you, your husband, or you to deal with your marital or your sexual trauma or whatever, then that is not necessarily the person that you should be sitting in front of seeking solutions. And so I really want to push up that when you have people like Dr. Lucas, when they have companies and businesses that support a culturally sensitive and supportive therapy, that we seek that out. In Proverbs, it says, seek out knowledge and wisdom as if it were silver. That means when you looking for what club you want to go to, what hair you want to buy, or what, do your homework. Well, we need to start doing our homework about the kinds of people we allow to touch us. Yeah. And we need to do our homework about the kind of people we sit in front of. And just because they look like us, as much as I edify, I don't care what color you are, if you don't treat me well, then you are not the person I need to with. And so I'm totally supportive of seeking out a provider that looks like me, as long as they understand that this is about me and not about you.
Hmm.
All
There's
all
still a
skin folk
standard.
definitely ain't your kin folk.
Would you say?
I say all skin folk definitely ain't your kin folk.
There's
So
still a standard. That there still has to
absolutely.
be a standard. Yeah.
So one of the
That's what
resources that I'm aware of,
are people about. What is the standard? What, from an educational perspective, what is the standard for selecting a counselor? What skill sets should I be looking for? How many clients have they talked to that look like me? How many people have you done this particular procedure on? So we need to our point in this discussion, we have to start asking questions. As slaves, we were penalized. Dare not look directly at, nor would you dare to question authority. And even today, we're struggling with that question and doing it appropriately. How do you question authority without cursing somebody out or losing your temper? How
Hmm.
can you address it in a way that edifies who you are, but makes it clear to that person you're talking to that you mean business and that you have a certain level of expectation about how you're treated and how they speak to you and how they treat you. And that is the skill set that we must continue to work on with our community, young or old.
hmm, one of the resources that I'm aware of in terms of mental health for Black folks, particularly Black women, is Therapy for Black Girls, um, which is a website. You can go to therapyforblackgirls.com. You can search for a therapist, do all of those things. Um, a
Say
lot
that
of a lot
again. Say that again.
therapy therapyforblackgirls.com. It's a resource that you can go to if you're looking for a therapist. It's kind of like what is it? Psychology Today, Dr. Lucas, is that correct?
Hmm.
Similar to that. It's almost like a just depending on where you're located, you can search for a therapist if you want
That
something, someone who is huh?
is that it in the chat?
You put it in the private chat. Yep.
That must have been in the private chat. I think I accidentally put
Don't
it in
worry.
the chat.
Don't worry. I got you. I got you
Oh,
covered. I put it in the comments.
okay.
And some people don't know that their employer may offer free therapy services through their EAP, which oftentimes, I think that can be hit or miss. But Dr. Lucas, are there any other resources out there for someone who has been considering going to therapy and finding a therapist?
Yeah, and I wanna broaden it to people of color, because I know we're talking about Black people, but I want to broaden it just a little bit to people of color, because I think therapy for Black girls is amazing, and there's Black men who also need
Hmm. Is it
support, and
therapy for
then
Black
there are
boys?
people who are, yeah, Black boys. There are those who just all different cultures, right? I think that we can use the tools that everybody knows about. We all know about BetterHelp. We all know about psychology today, right? Those are good tools. But regardless of the database, because I love what Dr. Gaddis just said about the standard, right? Look at what they offer, right? Is this Does this person live it? Because that's important to me, that you live what you're trying to walk me through. Because yes, this is a science, what we do as therapists, but it also has to be something you're passionate about, that you deeply understand, that you've had a walk or understanding, that you can have this lens as you walk with me through something. So I would look at, the Bible also says, Dr. Gaddis, because I love the scripture you gave, but it says, "What in all thy getting, get an understanding," right? Make sure we understand what it is that we need. A part of our advocacy for ourselves is understanding what we need. So, do you need EMDR? Do you need
EMDR. You
CBT?
got to say the thing. EMDR. Say the thing. What is that?
Um, mm, it's losing me. But do you
I didn't
need
mean to put you on the
motivational
spot.
interviewing? Do you need CBT or cognitive behavior therapy? Like, what? what do these specific modalities and approaches, what do they help with? Like what do they best support for you in your life, right? Do you need brain spotting? Do you need, what do you need? So you need to research and kind of know what you're dealing with. Now, what I love about Therapy for Black Girls, Psychology Today, is that they also have these lists that show you what people specialize in. They specialize in anxiety, they specialize in grief, or what have you. And it tells you how long they've been practicing. That is important. And it tells you who they feel they best serve. And what I also want to tell people is just because you find one therapist today, you can talk to another one tomorrow. And I know we don't want to start over, but it's just like a relationship. If it doesn't work, you got
Hmm.
to move on to the next thing.
So
You
let me
can't,
ask you a question. I have two questions. One is, you've heard of BetterHelp.
yeah.
What is your opinion about BetterHelp as a telehealth, telemedicine, mental health platform that people can get access to mental health support virtually? What is your professional opinion about that?
So
That's my first question.
okay, so telehealth or virtual therapy, I totally advocate for it because I feel like everyone can't, there's transportation issues, there's all sorts of things. And I know for me, I do therapy on my lunch break. So if I am at work and I work from home and I can just log on to the computer, that cuts out a commute time for me to go face to face. I also offer therapy virtually. So I think that it's a huge advantage to be able to go ahead and reach out to someone. Some of my clients talk to me from their phone, right? They're on their phone, they're in their car, they just went on their lunch break and sat in their car and had a therapy session. So I think it's beneficial to
So my
everyone.
last question, I know we're running out of time, Mr. Chavis, but I want to. So, Dr. Lucas, do you have a mentor? Do you have someone that you go to? So you're Dr. Lucas, and I know you shared with us that you have a therapist, which my
Hmm.
daughter's a clinical social worker who does therapy, and she says everybody should have a therapist.
Right, right.
So that being said, not on a not on necessarily a professional side of clinical, but do you have a mentor? And what has been the biggest challenge you've had if you don't have one, or if you do have one, what was difficult about finding a mentor?
That is so good. That's a great question. Yes, I have several mentors. So when I did my dissertation, I intentionally chose all Black women as my dissertation committee. And so all of those women, those five Black women, are still in my life, and they are there for me to go to on every topic, every anything. So those are mentors. I also have people just in my life, like not on a professional level, who are mentors, who are spiritual mentors, who helped me navigate through things as a wife and a mother, right? One of the hardest things for me, specifically with my specific trauma, is trust, right? And being able to share those dark, ugly places in my life with a mentor and receive that guidance. Um, so that was hard for me. So you have to find people that you can confide in, that you can trust in, and understanding, right, that you're not going to agree with everything that they say, but do you trust their heart? You know what I mean?
Well,
Can
and
you?
that's I asked that because in my professional career, that has been the most difficult challenge as we talk about mental health and women, especially women that move into these certain spaces of professionalism. I mean, I can even recall going to someone that I held in high esteem and saying I was interested in her mentoring me. And her response to me was, well, I'm not sure I'm the right one because you have a doctorate. So they couldn't get past my professional titles in order to see what I saw in them, which had absolutely nothing to do with what I needed on a professional note. So I said all that to say I think for women in general, regardless of our standing in life, that we should, as you've said, be very deliberate and intentional about finding someone's who have our best interest in mind, who we can trust, who, when we're vulnerable, they don't judge us, but will confront us if necessary with our
Hmm.
stuff. but allow a secret space, if you will, for us to be vulnerable and to learn from them and their life experience.
Yeah.
So I was just
And
wondering if you had one.
I love that because also as a young woman, I have to find someone who's going to allow me to be their peer and to also be my mentor, right? Because there has to be a mutual respect. Like, I'm not, don't pat me on the head, right? I'm not your little girl, but so respect me as your peer, but also be have that confidence, right, to mentor me and tell me. I always tell people I need a Yana Van Zant. I need somebody to tell me, hey, get it together. I need that, right? And so I need someone who has that confidence and ability to do that, but love me through the dark moments too.
Well, I think black women have tend to go to men for that. And I'm going to tell you, just as much trauma as I've experienced in the world, I've also experienced a lot of trauma with black women. And I
Yeah,
say that in
real.
front of John because I know he edifies the existence of black women, but they've also been very. I don't think we still have some work to do as black women about how we treat one another and the trauma that we perpetuate with one another out of jealousy or just something that just has nothing to do with anything. It could be as simple as I don't like your hair, I don't like your clothes, and I don't like you.
Makes you
Um,
better than me because you're confident and you walk in a room knowing who you are. Another woman is threatened by that.
yeah, and so that's part two, Dion.
Okay, that's fine. That's
So,
fine.
so Dr. G, we're gonna let them unpack their shit. That's an insecurity. That's a
Yeah,
I.
your shit. Yeah, I got to get that book. I'm gonna make a recommendation. Unpack your shit. So where do you get that?
DrLashaundaLucas.com.
Okay, yeah, I'll look that up.
And me and you
Okay,
gotta
Dion,
talk because I like the energy.
we were bonding. Sorry, Dion.
Hey, I'm
It's
a
a
fly on
black
the
girl
wall.
thing. Sorry, Dion.
I'm not mad. I do want to say that EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing therapy.
Yes.
So let's as we wrap up, I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about, well, really one thing. How can black men be allies? Because we live in this age and we live in this space where we consistently see black men and black women being pitted against each other on social media. We see these things about $500 dates and who should be going 50-50 on what bill. We see all of these things where we're being pitted against each other on social media. But I'm of the belief that we all need each other to exist and to thrive, right? You can't have the black man without the black woman. You can't have the black woman without the black man. You can't have the black family without either of those. So, as a part of our responsibility to black women, it is to be allies. So, I want to know, Dr. Lucas, how can we as black men be better allies to black women in terms of contributing to a better mental health landscape for you all?
I think as black men, brothers, fathers, husbands, cousins, friends, listen to her and allow her a safe space to be soft. It is really difficult for us to be soft because we have always had to be guarded. We got to be guarded in the workplace. We got to be guarded. As Dr. Lashaunda Lucas, when I am going to talk to people about the Black Mental Health Conference and I'm being told no because it's called the Black Mental Health Conference, or I'm experiencing racism, right, and microaggressions because it's called the Black Mental Health Conference. I don't need to experience that at home. I don't need to experience that at the family reunion, right? Be be a listening ear, be a shoulder, be a support. Allow me to be soft in this space. Don't make me have to have my guard up here. Treat me with respect, but also I'm a woman. At the end of the day, we talk about black woman. Be delicate with me. I think that that's a great way to be an ally, and I think also use your voice, use your power, because if you're a black man, you're black, but you're a man, and use your voice, use your power, like what you're doing today, Dion. You're holding this platform for us to talk about this, and
And
people
defend
are.
us if need be. And defend us if need be. If you see someone coming for us, step in so we don't have to defend ourselves. You know, there's no other edification than having your black man, whether it's your brother or whoever, step in and say, yo, Who you think you talking to?
Yeah.
Dr. G, I have a question for you. Are you at a space where you've entered your soft girl era, or are you
Who's he talking
still just
to?
are you
Who's he asking? He's asking me.
yes.
Okay,
Are,
so here's what, and why, and I'm just going to be transparent. Why we're on here? My sister called and she's been listening, and the fact she didn't hang up means volumes. So let me just say that we were raised by a man from the ages, and I'm sure I'll get it wrong, less than two, you were six, 6, 10, whatever. We were less than 8, 10 years
mhm.
old, right? And so what you see, what Mr. Chavis sees in me is my daddy. And it's been both a blessing and a curse. Now, if you talk to my husband, he knows my soft spots. He
Right.
knows that I'm emotional person, but people don't see that in me. They think I'm hard. They misinterpret my language and how I communicate, which I'm just going to say, in my opinion, borders on assertive, super assertive, if that's such a word. I do not believe I'm aggressive. I believe that I am clear on what I like and what I don't like. I believe in justice and fair play. And if I see it, injustice, I call it, for back to Dr. Lucas, I call it as I see it. And that can bring both blessings and curses. And so I do have a soft spot. I do get injured. I do cry. I do have spaces where I have to go and get under. I don't sleep a lot, but I have to find me a secret space and just process out how I'm going to deal with something, because it's just me. At the end of the day, all of us are on our own. We can have all these support systems, but at the end of the day, we're on our own, making choices, hopefully good ones. Um, my biggest goal, Dion, is to, um, I hope that before I leave this earth, I find a female mentor. I
Mm.
haven't found that yet. And I'll be, what, 69 in September? So as far as my mental health is concerned, that is my goal, to find a woman that I bond with, not my girlfriend, but a woman that has some experiences that I don't have, who I can nurture from and with before I leave the earth.
Let me and
Can I
we're
say,
running. Go ahead, Dr.
I'm
Lucas.
sorry. Can I just tell Dr. G that is absolutely beautiful. You are 1,000% my type of woman, and I don't know if that means anything to you, but you are 1,000% my type of woman. You know who you are. You're not making any apologies for it, and they can take it or leave it. And you said you are still looking for a mentor. That level of vulnerability and self awareness and like all of that is 1,000% beautiful to me. So I just had to share that with you. And
I
hey,
pre-
sister.
Mhm. I want to ask a question. We are definitely running. We're running over time, but Dr. G, you said something, and this isn't something that I struggle with, but this is something that I hear women that I know, and that when I have conversations about therapy and therapists, something that they are struggling with, and it is the struggle of being someone who is a bit more seasoned in their life, right? You're not 25, you're not 30, but finding someone who is compatible with you to be a therapist or mentor, because when you're 40, 45, 50 years old, and then a lot of the therapists that are coming up right now, let's be honest, they're 29, 30, they got their degree. So it's hard, like it's a struggle to find someone that you can connect with on your level. Like you don't want your little sister to be your therapist, right? But you also don't want your grandma. I'm assuming as a woman, like you want someone who is like big sis, like not necessarily auntie, not necessarily mom, but someone who's like big sis to you. So talk a little bit about like the struggles that come along with being a black woman and being over the age of 40 and trying to find someone to fill those roles of therapist and mentor.
Go ahead, Dr.
Anybody?
Lucas.
Oh, was that for me or Dr. G?
Yeah, that's for
Anybody,
you.
it don't matter. That's for you. Yeah.
Oh, I struggle on the other end. I'm 36, right? But I got married at 23 and I have two kids. And so what the different thing for me is that I think when I it was hard for me to find a therapist because I would get on and I would tell them about my life. I feel like I got the life of a 50-year-old, right? But I'm 36. So it's having someone to understand that difference, like I said, of don't pat me on the head because I've done my work, right? But I need someone also with the confidence who can still like support where I am in my life, right? So to me, it's a weird space. It's a weird space, but I think that as long as you find someone that offers what you need and they understand you, and you feel safe, I mean that makes it easier. But I think it's difficult. That's just a
Have to
difficult
shop
space.
around. I'm just going to be
Hmm.
honest. Everybody I've ever talked to about seeking counseling, they've always said the same thing to me, and I don't know why. I don't know whether I should resent it or not, but they said I should get a white practitioner. That I would.
Ah,
Well, I'm just saying that's what I've been told. That given my persona, that is the direction I should go. I think what it has caused me is dissonance to a place where I haven't sought anybody, and where
Hmm.
and what I'm saying it not to be self-indulgent. I'm saying that whoever's listening is that you know you,
yeah.
and I don't want to seek out something for the sake of seeking it. I have to ask myself, why do I need a counselor? What is it that I'm trying to process out in my life? What am I grateful for? And what do I need to, quote, work out? And I am not sure I've identified yet what I need to work out, other than finding some new contracts and some new work that
You're gonna need
inspires
both.
and continues to excite me. Other than that, I haven't figured it out yet. So that's something that you know is a good thing for me. I think because as long as I have breath, I can continue to seek and learn. And one day, I believe someone will manifest in my life that I really believe can help me process what time I have left on this earth. I'm trying to get to my three score and ten, and so I'll get to that, and we'll move on. Our mother passed at 97.
Hmm.
I don't know if I'll make it that far because I have probably have more vices than she did. But at the end of the day, I'm excited about my future. And
Hmm.
my goal is to try to build that same kind of excitement in other people, including my sister who's going back to school at the age of 60
Hmm.
something. And she's going to get a master's degree. So I want her
That's
to be
awesome.
successful. And my role is to motivate and to help her understand that she's capable of achieving anything that she sets her mind to.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what our goals are as ambassadors, as people who say we believe in a higher source. Um, we're not here, when we talk about mental health awareness, we're here to inspire people to seek out their own mental health.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm here for. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that.
That is a word, Dr. G, and we will close out with that. Dr. Lucas, do you have any last words? Please be sure to include how people can connect with you, purchase your books and your content, book you to speak. Tell them about the Black Mental Health Conference. Tell them about all the things. If you don't, I most certainly will, ma'am.
So you can reach me at drlashaundalucas.com. That is my website. On Instagram, I'm Dr. Lashonda. The Black Mental Health Conference is BMH Conference on Instagram. Please reach out to me for anything around motivational speaking, professional development, around Black family issues, Black family dynamics, psychological safety, any of those topics, anything in the topics of mental health. I do want to let y'all know about the Black Mental Health Conference. We had our first conference in February with Chrisette Michelle as our keynote speaker, and Dion Chavis, Mr. Showtime, is one of our featured speakers. And so we are planning for 2025. This conference is for
When
all
was that? Where was it? It was in February.
February 10th.
Oh,
And it was here in the RDU area, and we had Chrisette Michelle. She came in as our keynote speaker. We are planning for 2025. It's going to be again in the RDU area. You can go to the bmhconference.com to get more information and updates. Please subscribe to our email list so you can be the first to receive information when tickets go on sale. We are accepting speakers, and so Dr. Gaddis, I'm going to be talking to you because we want, of course, some dynamic speakers. But the conference is for Black mental health professionals or any mental health professional who advocates and supports for Black mental health. So if you're a mental health advocate, an educator, mental health professional, please look forward to information about the conference. And then we're always looking for sponsors. If you are a mental health agency or any company, institution, organization that supports Black mental health, please reach out to me at lashaundalucas@gmail.com. Send me an email and let me know if you want to partner with us, if you want to be involved this year. So last year we had about 200 mental health professionals. This year I dream really big. Dion knows this. I dream huge. And so this year I think we're going to have about 400 participants or people to attend this conference, and we're working on some pretty big things. So I can't wait till they are confirmed and I can share them with y'all. But we're working on some big things.
Yeah, I'm gonna be hollering at you.
Holla, yes, let's get together.
She said it's gonna
Dr.
be.
It's
Gaddis,
and Raleigh Durham. It's gonna be up in the Raleigh Durham.
Yeah, so
Raleigh.
we're searching for a bigger venue right now. We possibly the convention center. So we're working on some huge things, and so we really need some partners. If you have an organization that wants to partner and sponsor with us, let's do this. Let's go ahead and work it out.
Well, I'll get your info from Mr. Chavis. I'm going to close by saying I appreciate you so much for taking the time to come on. And Dion just has this plethora of brilliance down in his little suitcase that he carries around from town to town. So I am grateful to him. I'm looking forward to next. What are we doing next Wednesday, Mr. Chavis?
I had to change the date because I got to go to Atlanta. I got to speak at a conference, so I'm changing that date. But
He's
I'll let you know
booked,
for sure.
booked and busy.
Nah, I'm
Yeah,
just,
that's a good
I'm trying
thing.
to,
It
I'm just
is.
trying to take care of these kids, man. That's it. I'm trying to take care of these kids. That's
Yeah,
it.
no comment.
That's it.
Anyway,
Yeah. So,
I
Can I
have
say
so
one
thanks,
more
thank you.
thing?
again.
Go,
Yes.
Dr. Lucas. What
Say
you
one
got?
more thing, Dion, because you when you say you're trying to take care of these kids, made me think about something. So
Mm-hmm.
we are establishing the Black mental health movement at HBCUs as a student organization.
Oh,
So
we need
we
to talk.
want, yeah, we want because when you get out in the field, like in school, you don't learn about these modalities. You don't learn about cultural responsivity actually, right? Like they talk about cultural competence, but you learn all these monoculturally defined approaches. You learn white practices in therapy. So you got to get out of school and pay for all this information to know how to work with your people, right? So I want to start this with the people in school, with the students right now, having conversations about Black mental health, sharing resources and information so that when they're writing their papers and they're doing their projects, even if the textbook is not teaching you about Afrocentric theory or empowerment theory or Black feminist theory, right? You're learning about it. You're getting that information now, right? And so we're talking about our future scholars.
So I have a body of data we just collected on HBC, 7 HBCUs. I presented some of that back to Black physicians. Um, I have a particular interest in your conference because some of what I shared with them, not just about around self-reported behaviors from freshmen at those institutions around sexual health, addiction potentiality, but there was a significant a number of questions that really speak to mental health, suicidal ideation, and trauma that I'd like to share. And so I do definitely want to follow back up with you regarding your conference coming up next year to see if some of that can be shared with your therapists because they are desperately in need of mental health support at HBCUs, but many times it's non-existent.
I love it. Let's talk for sure.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll connect y'all offline. We're at above and overtime at this point, but
We sure did.
thank you, Dr. Gaddis. Thank you, Dr. Lucas. We appreciate your time, and I just appreciate you all being a part of this space and being open and vulnerable to have this conversation with me. And I just like to make sure that Black women know that I personally appreciate you, I value you, and I just thank you for you both for all of your contributions and everything. I see you, I hear you, and I just want to thank you all for being the backbone of society, right? And just keep helping us keep all of this stuff together. So appreciate you both. We'll see you all maybe next week. I don't know, Doctor. I got to figure it out, but we'll work something out. If not next week, the following.
In the meantime, can you get me one of them shirts?
I sure can. What color you want?
I want one.
What?
Jackie said, I want one.
I got you.
Red is good. Blue. Oh, I definitely want one of those. Okay.
Okay, I got you. Red. All right, bye.
I
All
got.
right, y'all. Have a good one. We'll talk to y'all later.
Sorry, Dion.